But with that pruning, you have new growth and new possibility, and it will be healthier as a result of that.
But sometimes part of our struggle in loving our neighbor is connected to our struggle in loving
Indeed.
ourselves.
And if you keep thinking like that, you're just going to keep getting better and better and better.
This is Pod Strangely Warmed, a place where we tell the good Methodist story, where we have conversations that invite followers of Jesus to seek after that loving, just, and free world that God imagines for us all, and have a little fun along the way. Hey, Pod Strangely Warmed family, welcome back to the podcast. We are on location here at Keller United Methodist Church at Clergy Covenant Day, the first one ever for the newly formed Horizon Texas Conference. And we are blessed today by the presence of Hesha Abrams, Esquire, renowned lawyer, mediator, conflict negotiator. And she's been talking with us preacher types about how to navigate conflict in life and in the church. Now, conflict's never something that comes into the church, is it?
Oh, never. Of course not. Everybody gets along and walks around on rose petals.
Right. The kingdom of God is fully at hand. Everyone is their perfect best self, right?
That's right.
All the time. The truth is, conflict shows up in every space of our life. And you've seen it in lots of different places and spaces. This podcast is overwhelmingly aimed at church nerds. And so we're going to talk about how conflict shows up in the church and how we might find our way through it. As you were telling me before we started recording that you've worked with churches, with synagogues, with communities of faith, kind of working through real moments of crisis and implosion, trying to find a way forward. Are there some characteristics that you've seen for like how churches and how people within churches navigate conflict when it shows up?
So it's a terrific question. So first of all, churches are not any different than any other organism of people. We all have bumper car egos. And the problem is that we have very higher expectations for our clergy because you're not a real person, right? You don't have an amygdala. You don't have your own needs and fears and concerns. You're some father figure or some mother figure, and you're supposed to take care of me the way I wasn't taken care of or do what I want. That adds a more difficult development, an element to all of this. But the holding the calm techniques are all about putting people at ease, letting the amygdala, which is the fear negativity center in the brain, calm down so that you can try to get some things done and then realize you're not going to change people. We joke when you talk about conflict. I do this standard joke that people look at conflict as either it's a root canal or a colonoscopy.
Oh,
Depends on which end you're coming from, right?
Neither are great.
No.
And
like you said, church nerds listening to this, we have wonderful, glorious people who say, how can I do this better? How can I be more meaningful?
Yeah.
And so the beautiful thing that you have that corporations don't have, or homeowners associations, or other large groups of people, is you have this infusion of God and this infusion of Jesus and the idea of like, what would Jesus do and how would we do it? But I want to share something with you that I thought was brilliant. In the Bible, it says, love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
Why? Dennis Prager's a Jewish theologian, and he said, why did God say that? Why didn't God say, love all of mankind, love all of people? Because God knows loving all of humanity is easy. Loving the jerk next door,
Right.
that's hard.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing here.
That is the intent. That's the goal, right? And I love the as yourself piece of that too, not to derail us on kind of deep theological reflection on the greatest commandment, right? But sometimes part of our struggle in loving our neighbor is connected to our struggle in loving
Indeed,
ourselves.
very wisely said.
And so that call is both and, right?
Yes.
Love the annoying parts of your neighbor and the annoying parts of yourself.
Indeed. And so part of it is, one of the things I always tell people is have grace. You know, it doesn't mean forgive bad behavior. It doesn't mean let yourself be a floor mat and let somebody hurt you.
Right.
But if you want to have forgiveness, you got to forgive others. If you want to have grace, you've got to give grace. And what I was just telling in the ministers in our group is the greatest two words you can ever say is a do-over. You are going to screw up. I'm going to screw up. Everybody is going to mess up. But as the words are coming out of your mouth, you're going, oh, God, why did I say that? That's terrible. If you can either pull it back, or let's say you did it, and I thought I said something innocuous and easy, and then your face went, whoa, what is that? Well, I got instant feedback, didn't I?
Yeah.
I didn't mean it that way. Do you mind if we have a do-over?
Yeah.
Who says no to that?
Right.
Really? So that's a beautiful way of demonstrating grace in a real live church situation.
Well, and I think sometimes in churches, right? You talked about our bumper car egos earlier, right? That is something that we all have an ego. We have we talked about the place and power of a healthy ego
Yes.
among a group of pastors, right? If the greatest human fear is standing in front of a group, who has to do it every week of the world,
That's
right?
right.
Pastor types. We do it with God's help and with a little bit of a healthy ego. But I wonder also if part of the conflict in the church is not just like the individual ego, but the church is a space where people care deeply. They feel a sense of ownership and investment, right?
Beautiful.
And sometimes the combination of the things can like raise the temperature
Yes.
in the room or raise the temperature in a moment of conflict.
Yes.
When it's either change that has come or an idea
Yes.
that is different
Yes.
than ours that has come. And so a lot of what we've talked through so far in holding the calm, right? You named about kind of having techniques to kind of diffuse the situation, right? In a moment. Can you just give us a quick run through of what some of those basic beginning techniques
Yes.
for in a church or in any kind of context where we find ourselves in a moment of conflict? And then ultimately, I'm going to invite us to point us to how do we take that moment once things are calm and then move toward a longer term relational resolution, right? Because ministries is about surviving the moment, right?
That's right.
But also the lifetime.
That's right. So that's beautifully said. So first, what I want to talk to you about is everybody is not going to be able to do everything. So part of the reason I wrote the book, and I did it in 20 chapters, is so that people can take it out in isolated pieces.
Yeah.
Some people will do better on this one. Some will do better on others. You're an extrovert. You're going to handle the talking different than someone who's an introvert. So it's the diagnostic piece is absolutely crucial to be able to do. So the do-over is the first piece I asked.
Okay.
The second thing is that I joke that you're supposed to listen, but don't listen.
Okay.
Isn't that like a crazy thing to say?
Yeah, unpack
So
that.
if I'm listening to you, what most people are doing in their head is, oh, I've heard this before, stop whining, you're arguing, you're on a power play, you're a narcissist, I've told you this before, and we label and we pull things. It's natural, it's human, this is what we do. So you have to give the brain something else to do. So if I'm listening to you, I like to ask 3 questions. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? In my head, you don't ask the person that.
Right.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert? I think you're an extrovert. Okay. Are you a big picture person or a detail person? I think you're a big picture person. Are you a thinker or are you a feeler? You're a thinker, but you got a lot of feeling in you, right? So now I look at you, I can put the right bait on my hook if I'm fishing.
Okay.
I can offer the right kind of meal. Are you gluten-free? Should I give you pizza? Should I not? What does that do? It turns on the give a darn meter inside me,
Yeah.
which makes you feel cared about, listened to, and valued, even though I'm going to say no to you. Even though I'm going to tell you can't do what you want to do,
Right.
but I'm going to make you feel good. And what I want to make everybody realize and think about as an image is a sunflower. Sunflowers are my favorite flower because they're heliotropic. They turn toward the sun no matter where they are. So human beings are lovotropic. We will turn toward validation and love.
Okay.
That's what we will do.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no to you, and you can't do it that way, but I respect you, I honor you, and I'm going to make sure you feel that way. That's what it's about. Now it's these skills, how to do it. You know, that's the whole rub of it. But you start with one of them. And you know who this works great on? Your kids, your spouse.
Sure.
Because you talked about the church being different, and you're right, because it's a family.
Right.
Well, think about any family.
Yeah.
A larger family. Everyone's got a crazy uncle. Everyone's got a weirdo brother-in-law. Everyone's got a crazy, half-sister. I mean, this is the way it is. So the church is a family. The family is a family. All right, you're invested. You give grace. You figure stuff out, and you try these techniques. It just makes everything smoother.
I have a saying with families a lot of times because they'll often come pastorally and have some shame with like, we've got this level of dysfunction within our system and we have a hard time navigating through that.
Yes.
And every family's dysfunctional, right? The question is, what is the nature of the dysfunction and the scale of the dysfunction?
That's exactly right.
Human relationships are
fraught.
They're fraught, right? They're not simple. They're not easy. What I hear you saying, and push back if this is not what you're intending to say here, is as you're listening, listen to more than the words that are being said.
Correct.
Right.
Correcto mundo. Exactly. And having jokes, having nicknames, why do we like it when we have, good nicknames, not bullying, nasty ones?
Sure.
Why do we like that? It makes me feel intimate, makes me feel connected. It makes me feel like you care about me.
Yeah.
It's having little things like that with each other. So let's say, for example, we did a joke in the main room where somebody asked a question that was a big question. Like, how do you solve world peace? Like, it was a big one.
Right.
So my response was to go, whoa, that's a big question. And everyone laughed. Gave me a couple of seconds to think.
Sure.
How did I want to respond?
Yeah.
What do I want to do? One of the beautiful things, and why I call the book Holding the Calm, is that when things happen, it's intense, right?
Yeah.
You need a few seconds. You need a moat around the emotion so I can think for a minute. What do I want to do? How do I choose to say it? And so literally, part of the reason I called the book Holding the Calm is I do that for myself. I will literally close my eyes for a second and say, I'm holding the calm, I'm holding the calm, I'm holding the calm. It tells my amygdala, my fear and negativity center in my reptilian brain, I'm not powerless. I got options. I got choices.
Yeah.
Now, what do I choose to do? What do I choose to say? So I can say, I need a do-over, or I can say, tell me more.
Yeah.
Imagine someone's vomiting on you, right?
Right.
And then you say, tell me more.
Yeah.
You disarm them instantly. Half that poison is gone. What do you mean, tell me more? I thought you were going to argue with me and fight with me and challenge me. No.
Yeah.
Tell me more. I want to understand. You know why I want to understand? Because you're important to me. Now, I'm going to tell you no. I know I'm going to tell you no. I know we can't do what you want to do, or I have to redirect you someplace. But I'm going to give you the respect that I care about you, and maybe I'll explain to you why I can't do it. Sometimes I can't.
Right.
So that's just the nature of reality. Okay, but I can still treat you with enough respect where you walk away going, okay, well, I'm just going to have to trust that they're going to handle it. But I don't feel victimized or angered. And remember, people come to you with all their, especially as a pastor, especially in a church, people come with all their wounds and scars.
Yeah.
All of them. And you don't know that that's a sensitive spot. When
Right.
you hit it and you get an ouch,
Right.
do over.
And the response may not be about the thing that is
Exactly right.
The kind of emotional reactivity.
It's
is
usually not
coming
about
from.
the thing.
Right. As this is, I think, a really helpful place, right, to begin. Like when conflict comes, how do we deal with it? How do we begin to process it? Right.
Yeah.
One of your the invitation to listen to not just what is said, but what is kind of communicated non-verbally. Right. I was sharing with you before we got started. Each one of the first 4 churches I served had the same annoying person in them. Right. And it was just a wonderful blessing and a joy. And it was only upon reflection with my wife as we got to the 4th church, I'm like, this person's here again. And they weren't literally moving with me, but there's a personality type
That's right.
that expresses itself in a way that is a challenge for me,
Yeah.
right? That I have to intentionally kind of go, how am I going to communicate, right?
That's
Instead
right.
of reacting
That's
to
right.
them, I'm going to choose how I respond.
That's
to
exactly
them,
right.
Right? Because for me, it's just in case if you're ever dealing with me, the personality type is I have one thing that matters more than anything else in the whole world. It's it's a meaningful thing in the church, but for me, it's the whole church. When, as the big picture guy, it's not the whole church, right? I see all the beloved saints doing all the amazing things, right? That it's meaningful and valuable.
Just because it's your issue doesn't mean it's anybody else's issue.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it's not an important issue to you.
Yeah. And that reacting versus reflecting,
Yeah.
right, or responding piece is one that says, this is a part of your core identity.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to see that and hear that
good
and
for you.
choose how I respond differently
for you.
because I recognize it's a part of kind of core identity. Right?
That's exactly right.
Part of, and that is,
And someone may think, there's nothing more important than this.
right.
But this is what's interesting. Let's say you have a couple of those people. It'd be really interesting to have a group meeting of a bunch of those people and say, have a flip chart in the room. Say, let's talk about the most important issue. Then what happens is they're fighting with each other. It's this. No, it's this. No, it's this. No, it's this. And you're sitting and listening. You don't have to say, everybody listen. There's different perspectives, and we all have to be respectful to each person's view. I hate that because no one likes to have a school marm, lecturing them. It's ridiculous. But when you let them see it for themselves, my issue isn't the be all for everybody because I saw it myself. I wasn't told and disrespected that this isn't the most important issue. There's a lot of issues. I don't want to only eat bread. I sometimes want rice and noodles.
Right.
Okay. So that this way, I joke a lot about taste tests. I think taste tests are fantastic things for churches to use.
Yeah.
Instead of calling it change, we're going to try something new.
Yeah.
We're going to experiment with this. Those are scary words for people, who don't like change. Taste test.
Yeah.
We're going to try some different things, and then you're going to tell us if you liked it or you didn't. You give power.
Right.
You give ability. And we try. Maybe we want to stay. Maybe we want to tweak it. I don't know. We can adapt. Yeah. And then it gives heliotropic power.
Yeah. Well, and the beauty of the taste test is you're not committing to eat that for the rest of your life.
That's right.
Right? It's a moment. I'm going to have this bite, right?
That's right.
When I think of like worship shifts and things like that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
We've done it for Lent or for Advent, for like a specific season in the life of the church. Like for the next 6 weeks, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And if it works, great, we'll keep it. And by the time we get to week 6, it's not change anymore. It's become kind of that rhythmed pattern.
And now it's status quo. Don't you change it.
Right.
Because that's the new one. But it's human beings. And then the other thing too, people are frightened. This is a tough world. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. And we talk about it's a jungle and we're all in the meadows and it's all fine. But then there's jaguars and there's lions and there's scary stuff that happen. And then people circle the wagons in. Different people have a different capacity for fear, for trauma experiences, for adventure, for status quo.
Right.
You don't have the time to really get into that with people, but they will sure as heck tell you. And so if you look at what they say they need or they want, they're self-medicating to a certain extent.
Okay.
This is what's important. So let's say the guy or gal who has the one issue and is just a bulldog, like you said, rushing right through. That's a need to be important. That's a need to matter. Now, they find a cause, and it's an important cause because you can't argue with me. This cause.
Right. Feeding children is, and absolutely.
That's right. But that's not what it's about. It's, I need to feel important. I need to feel that I matter.
Yeah.
And I need to feel like I have purpose.
Yeah.
You can address all of those underlying issues. It doesn't have to be in the way they want it. That's what makes you the leader. So you help guide and direct that because you are the leader of your church.
I've seen an experience. You talk about earlier the power of, you're going to tell somebody no, right? But you're going to do so in a way that is respectful, in a way that validates their humanity, that kind of sees them more fully, right? And as church leaders, right, we tend to, be either. We've got some Enneagram 8s in our midst, right, who are kind of charging straight ahead. I know Myers-Briggs is your preferred. I tend to be more an Enneagram guy.
I get him. I get it.
But, where they're like, I'm just going to tell you straight, this is how it is, and boom, right? But then there's a lot of others that are a little more conflict avoidant and who may have the gift of telling somebody no in such a way that they don't actually know that they got told no, right? They did such a good job of validating and seeing somebody and affirming them and doing all that they get to the no, but they don't, the no doesn't click and stick. Do you have, as somebody who kind of navigates this dance professionally, do you have any advice for, I'm going to confess, those of us who sometimes, my wife will say, you told them no, but I don't think they know that you just told them no.
That's right.
Which is relationally short-term helpful.
Yes.
But maybe sometimes long-term causes problem, right? Because their experience of you is not consistent. Does that make sense? Like you flip-flopped. It's like, no, I know I was consistent, but your experience of me was not that way.
And see, this will be more of a challenge for you than for an introvert because you're an extrovert. So extroverts talk. So you'll talk, you hear yourself, I know what I said. The person who is going to respond the way you said, the example you laid out, is more likely an introvert, which means they had a whole discussion going on inside their head and it wasn't on outdoor speaker. So what you do is you say, why don't you tell me back what I think we've done?
Yeah.
And then if it's wrong, you can correct it right then and there. It's my spaghetti sauce analogy.
Right.
You wipe it up when it's wet, comes right up. You leave it overnight, you're scraping it off with a knife. So it's doing it right away, but it's having them tell you what they think the ending and the conclusion is. It gives you two things. One, it gives you certainty that what happened. It also gives them a lot of respect because those of us that are extroverts, we're big talkers.
Right.
And we don't realize that we've used up all the airspace in the room and there's not enough room for them to do because if you wanted to talk, you'd open your mouth and talk, right?
Right.
I'm married to an introvert engineer.
Right.
Ain't the way it goes.
No, I'm married to an introvert as well. And for April, one of the things that is like, she will sit with something And for me, I am talking toward the conclusion. I'm not talking. The first words that come out of my mouth aren't the conclusion, right? It's the journey.
Exactly
verbally,
right.
right? But for her, it won't come out.
That's right.
Until it's formed.
That's exactly right.
And one of our early challenges in marriage was navigating that difference,
Yes.
right? Because I'd hear her thing as we're starting the conversation.
That's right.
Because that's my default.
That's right.
Right. And she'd be like, no, that's the answer.
That's right.
Right. And she would hear my first thing as the answer when I'm like, oh, no, that's not, then no way is the answer.
But see,
right?
opposites attract. And I have a whole, God-based theory about that. The whole Adam and Eve thing is it's that everything this is in this world is divided. And we all know it's about building toward God and about harmony and about joining. So opposites are going to attract because my strengths are your weaknesses.
Right.
And your strengths are my weaknesses. By the merging together, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts if you can get past the conflict and not kill each other.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote this book, because there's ways you can make it easier. Like one of the biggest fights my husband and I ever had early on in our relationship was over how to cut radishes.
Okay.
Which
we had squeezing toothpaste, but
there you go.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with the toothpaste and has nothing to do with the radishes, right?
Right.
So, but if you stop, let's say conflict is happening. If you can stop and say, I don't want to fight with you. I love you.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this has kind of gotten out of whack. I want a do-over, or I want to hear you better because clearly I'm not hearing you. Because if you're feeling that frustrated, clearly I'm not making you feel heard and I want to take a step back. Yeah. So whoever's the one who can, in the first moment, be able to take that step back, it's like a Control-Alt-Delete. It's a reset of what it is you're doing. Fine, let's do it. You're humans. We bumper car ego all the time. This is the nature of the human experience, Right. So again, I always say people give grace, and you get better, you get better, you get better. And look if we were all too perfect, we'd die.
Right.
We wouldn't need to be here anymore.
Right. When we think about, you told a story of, hunters and elk and airplanes crashing into trees, right? It's a great story. That's enough to Google it and you'll find it. It closed by one hunter saying to the other, well, we got 100 feet farther this time than we did last time.
Right.
As we think about, conflict happens in a moment, right? But it can have a long shelf life if we don't deal with the spaghetti sauce on the counter. Churches are long-term relational spaces,
yes.
right? They're not immediate, short-term, and transactional.
Yes.
What wisdom would you offer to churches that are, because I think every one of our churches is facing change in some form or fashion in this season, right? We've come out of the COVID shutdowns and the impact that had on church. We've come out of a season of disaffiliation in the United Methodist Church in which 25% of the church decided to leave and go do something else, right? And each one of our local churches is reckoning with what is our new future? Where is God leading us in the future?
Yes.
On that kind of longer-term relational timeline, what wisdom would you offer to churches as they seek to go forward, knowing that they will have pockets of conflict on that long-term timeline?
Indeed. I love that. There's a whole chapter in the book on creating small, winnable victories. We tend to think of big things. Why, for example, is abortion such a huge issue? It affects a very small percentage of people, but it's such a huge issue because it's black and white. It's easy. Get your hands off my body or you're a baby killer. It's clean.
Yeah.
And so people gravitate. We do not gravitate well toward the gray. We like the absolutes, right? So if you're building long-term community, it's almost like you win some, you lose some, but I'm part of the team. Yeah. So depending on what analogies you're using, and I've talked with this sometimes about how men and women sometimes view things. People who have played organized sports are easier to let go of things and can be less passive aggressive. Why? Because I'm used to fighting with the ref. The call is made. I'm done. We move on to the next thing. People that have not played organized sports have not had that opportunity. So you get grudges, you get resentments. They're never resolved. Yeah. They're never taken advantage of. Nothing can ever happen, so you hang on to them. So if you use the wet spaghetti sauce analogy, it works so well because people don't do it. People will say, I'm not going to, I don't want to deal with it now. It doesn't go away. It just sits there like nuts for the winter. And so being able to create a safe space to say, we need some of this discussed and talked about.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really like in the book, I wrote a discussion guide in the back.
Okay.
And the publisher had really wanted me to do a workbook. And I said, no, I want to give this away for free. And I want to put it in the back of the book, simple, so that churches, organizations, HOAs, corporations who don't have training budgets could get a bunch of people. You have this little $12 or $13 paperback, and you just go through the questions because they track the book.
Yeah.
And the reason I like it is because the Bulldog person will go, well, that was stupid. I didn't see any reason for that. And somebody else will say, oh, I found that very meaningful. What? How could you possibly find that meaningful? Well, because it da-da-da-da-da-da. Now you have perspective opening. Now you have, wait a minute, I liked you. I didn't think you thought like that, but I do like you. And you were there for me when my brother was sick.
Yep.
And you think like that? Maybe it's not so crazy. And so you're literally making mental, psychological deposits in the bank account. That's how you build the long-term thing.
I love the idea of the small victories, and I'm a sports guy. It'll make Dustin nuts. He's not a sports guy. He'll do lots of other things, but that idea of sometimes, and I think sports is also powerful, not just in the conflict with the ref and things, but dealing with disappointment, which is also kind of can undergird some of our conflict.
Yes,
right.
indeed.
I could pour myself out, and my team could still lose, right? Or
exactly
I could not even make the team, or like, we could win, but I could have a bad game, right? Like there could be any number of those kind of things that when we invest ourselves in. And in church is not a place where we like to think about victories and losses, but we have moments of celebration and struggle.
Exactly right. So I'm going to give you an example that I just thought of this years and years and years ago when my kids were still in high school. I think it was Plano Senior High. I can't remember, but there was a big, huge school. And the star quarterback was dating the head cheerleader.
Okay.
And then, the star quarterback was gorgeous and talented and smart and had a golden life. Everything was great. Cheerleader broke up with him.
Okay.
And he went home and killed himself. Now, it shook the entire community. How did this happen? Why did this happen? I sat my children down and I said, do you know why that happened to him? Because he had had a golden life. He had never really experienced disappointment.
Yeah.
So when disappointment happened, his world ripped apart. It was cataclysmic. He could never survive it. So that's the kind of action he took. I said, so every time you have failed and you have picked yourself up and you have dusted yourself off, you have built resilience. You have built grit. You have let yourself know life is up and down. Life is in and out. Life is good and bad. I have resilience. I have the ability to be able to handle this. So letting your kids have disappointment, letting them fall down, letting them learn, they forgot, my grandson the other day, I took them to school and he forgot his water bottle. And I said, well, I guess you won't forget it tomorrow. You'll be drinking out of the school water fountain today.
Right.
And he was shocked. He didn't forget his water bottle today.
Right.
So these are I'm a grandmother now, so I've got a lot more parenting wisdom as a grandmother than I had as a parent because you learn along the way. I joke that you have these flat foreheads because you whack your head against the wall so many times.
Well, and we don't want to let our kids fail, right? And I think it's coming from the right place, right? We don't want to let our kids fail. We don't want to let our churches fail, right? And yet sometimes that fear of failure and the conflict attached to that can prevent us from ever saying yes to a thing that could be really transformative, right? Whether it officially works or not.
I have to tell you, I know you've had this big schism. I think your horizon and the church is going to be stronger for it because I don't think of it as a schism. And I think that's the wrong word to use. Okay. We should call it pruning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody is allowed to relate to God however they choose to relate to God. And if there's a group of people that this way is no longer serving and they want to go serve God some other way, God bless them.
Yep.
Let them go and do it. Yep. But with that pruning, you have new growth and new possibility. And it will be healthier as a result of that. And I really, after meeting all of your fabulous ministers, I absolutely believe that to be the case.
Well, I think the pruning has, what I've observed is created clarity on who we are and how we're going to be who God is calling us to be.
I love it.
Without always kind of looking over our shoulder or who's that going to make angry or what, there's just that ability to be.
I love it.
Who God has called us to be. We're going to wrap up here in just a minute or two, but I was curious. I know you're going to have a training session with Our Laity, or by the time people hear this, you will have already had a training session with Our Laity. if you had kind of if people hear nothing else today, right, as they navigate conflict in their family or in their church, what do you want them to hear?
That conflict is necessary, no shame, give yourself grace, and do a little better. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
And if you keep thinking like that, you're just going to keep getting better and better and better. And what will happen is people won't say, oh my God, you know how to hold the calm. Or, oh my God, did you read a book? Or, oh my God, did you take a training? They're going to just say, you just know how to handle people. You're just so good at what you do. I just like talking to you. You make me feel safe. That's when that's what people are going to say. And what a blessing from God to be able to give that gift to people.
Yeah.
It's a blessing.
So just like our spiritual practice is a practice, this too is a practice.
Yes.
Hesha, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for being with us at Covenant Day, and thank you for training our lay people this upcoming weekend. It's a gift, and I know I'm staying between you and lunch. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
Until next time, thank you again for being here with us on Pod Strangely Warmed. If this conversation was good to your soul or insightful to your brain and you want to learn more, the book is called Holding the Calm. You can find it on Amazon or anywhere you buy books for $12, $13, $14, somewhere in there. It's a really a quick read and a really helpful kind of framework tool for those moments. And as you said already, every single chapter may not be for every single person, right? It may be that you pick up a tool in the toolbox, and that's well worth.
That you can use now. You don't have to take some class or get some certification. How can I deal with this difficult person today?
Right.
Make your life easier, people. Make your life easier. You deserve it.
Amen. Amen. Until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins, and this is Pod Strangely Warmed. This has been Pod Strangely Warmed. If you enjoyed our conversation today, know that you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, any and all the places, we are there. So if you want to continue the good United Methodist conversation that you've been a part of today, find us, like us, rate us, review us, and share with a friend so that the good news that is happening right here in our own midst can amplify even more. Are we good? Are you sure? That wasn't confident. Perfect.
He's rolling around. He's like waiting for us to go.